There are moments on live television when the air changes. When the audience doesn't just watch, they hold their breath. When the cameras keep rolling, but every person on set silently asks the same question. Did that really just happen? This was one of those nights. It started with something so small, so subtle, that most viewers missed it. A half-second shift, a glance, a tremble in a smile. But for the people in the studio, the crew members, the producers, the security guards standing near the stairs, the tension was unmistakable. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Lili Reinhart walked onto the Tonight Show stage, and she wasn't acting like Lili Reinhart. Her stride was tight, her shoulders stiff, her eyes focused, almost too focused, like someone walking with a secret heavy enough to bend metal. And Jimmy Fallon, who almost always stretches his arms open for a friendly greeting, didn't move from behind his desk. He didn't even smile at first. Why? That's the question that people online would be asking within minutes. The clip would be slowed down, zoomed in, analyzed, frame by frame. Because when Lili appeared under those bright studio lights, she wasn't just there to promote a project. She wasn't there for games, or laughter, or a funny story from set. She was there with intent. She was there with something to say, and she knew exactly how explosive it was. But let's back up. Before the comments, before the shock, before Twitter and YouTube and every entertainment outlet scrambled to push headlines faster than they could type, before all of that, something happened backstage. Something subtle, something whispered, something that set the tone for what was about to unfold. A stagehand later claimed he overheard it. A makeup artist said she felt it. A security guard said the atmosphere went from normal to unnervingly tense in under 3 minutes. Lili had asked for privacy. Not the usual, give me a second to check my hair, kind of privacy. Something different. Something that made even the assistant assigned to accompany her stop mid-step. She asked, and I quote, "Can we keep the room closed? I don't want any extra eyes tonight." Extra eyes? On a Tonight Show taping? Who says that? Someone carrying a truth too dangerous to let leak before she speaks it herself. Now, imagine being Jimmy Fallon. Imagine being told, moments before a guest walks out, that she might go off script, might reveal something unexpected, might bring up a topic that was absolutely, unquestionably, not approved in pre-interview. Imagine being warned that the guest sitting across from you is prepared to drop a bomb, and that you'll have to manage it live. Fallon's smile returned eventually, of course. He's a professional, but it didn't reach his eyes. And when he introduced Lili, his voice had that strange tightness, that careful tone, the kind someone uses when they're bracing for impact. And the audience? They had no idea. They clapped, they cheered, they laughed when Jimmy made his usual opening joke. But by the second minute of the segment, the first cracks in the evening appeared. It began when Jimmy brought up Meghan Markle. Now, Fallon is known for steering toward feel-good topics. He loves celebrity friendships, cute stories, sweet moments. But that night, when he mentioned Meghan, it landed differently. The audience's reaction, or lack of it, was noticeably flat. And Lili's response? A single laugh. Sharp. Quick. Almost like she was letting out air she'd been holding far too long. Then she tilted her head and said the sentence that would blow the internet open. Yeah, there's a lot people don't know about Meghan. And her kids. Just like that. No hesitation. No filter. No protective Hollywood varnish. The room froze. Fallon blinked. The audience, unsure whether to laugh or gasp, did both at the same time. And Lili? She just watched Jimmy, waiting, almost daring him, to ask the next question. Now let me ask you this. Have you ever watched someone commit to a truth they know will cause an earthquake? Because that's what it looked like. A woman who'd been quiet for too long. A woman who'd clearly seen something. A woman who walked onto that stage with the energy of someone saying, "I'm done keeping this quiet." But why now? Why here? Why The Tonight Show? And more importantly, why Meghan Markle? Why her children? You might think Lili was joking, or exaggerating, or misinformed. But then she kept talking. And that's when the unease rippled through the studio. You could feel the shift. People shifted in their seats. Crew members exchanged glances. Fallon's body language stiffened by the second. But Lili pushed forward anyway. She said she'd been keeping a secret. Something she learned months ago. Something she didn't plan to bring up, until recent events pushed her to reconsider. She said she'd been sitting on information about Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana that she never intended to discuss publicly. And that's when the audience perked up for real. People love drama. They love revelations. But what they love most is the possibility that someone is about to say something that completely contradicts the polished story presented to the public. And Lili was circling something dangerous. She said there were inconsistencies. She said there were things she couldn't shake. She said there were Hollywood insiders whispering about the kids. But before Fallon could reel the conversation back into safe territory, before he could shift to a game or a lighthearted anecdote, before the producers could flash an emergency signal to cut the topic, Lili leaned closer to the desk, and she whispered something. The microphones didn't pick up all of it, but enough was heard. I'm not even sure those kids live with her. The gasp from the audience was real, sharp, audible, shocked. And that wasn't even the moment that lit the internet on fire. Because the truly explosive line, the line that would send every entertainment outlet scrambling, came less than 30 seconds later when Fallon attempted to pivot. He laughed nervously. He shuffled his cards. He said, "Well, I'm sure Meghan." And Lili cut him off. "I'm not convinced Archie and Lilibet are even hers." Silence. Jimmy blinked. Someone in the back row audibly muttered, "What?" And Fallon, now visibly rattled, leaned forward and whispered, "We're live, Lili." But she wasn't backing down. She wasn't scared. She wasn't confused or flustered or hesitant. She was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm belonging to someone who knew she was speaking from something more than gossip, more than speculation, more than Hollywood chatter. But the thing is, she didn't elaborate. Not then. She didn't explain what she meant. She didn't offer proof. She didn't clarify the source. She didn't let Fallon redirect. Instead, and this is what drove viewers insane, she smiled. A small smile. Quiet. Intentional. Like someone who knows exactly what they've just set in motion. And then she said, "I think it's time people start looking more closely at the timeline." That was it. That was the line that detonated across social media. Because timelines don't lie. Timelines expose contradictions. Timelines are the one thing that can't be reshaped by PR firms, fan theories, edited interviews, or well-crafted royal narratives. Timelines tell stories people don't want to hear. And Lili wanted people to hear it. Now, imagine the producers in the control room. Imagine the frantic headsets. Imagine the sudden whispered curse words. Imagine the staff trying to decide whether to cut to commercial early, or let the moment ride out, or pray that Fallon could salvage the moment on his own. But here's the truth. There was no salvaging what was already unleashed. Because even if the cameras cut, even if the comments were edited later, the live audience heard everything. And within minutes, people online were posting clips, recounting details, replaying Lili's tone, comparing her body language to Fallon's, and dissecting the moment frame by frame. But the most haunting part of the entire segment wasn't what she said. It was the look in her eyes when she said it. Because Lili wasn't wide-eyed. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't heated. She was steady, controlled, certain. And that's what terrified people more than anything, the certainty. It didn't feel like a celebrity taking a cheap swing. It didn't feel like drama for publicity. It didn't feel like an offhand remark or a reckless opinion. It felt like someone stating a conclusion. The kind someone reaches after seeing something firsthand. The kind someone arrives at after witnessing something they can't unsee. And the audience sensed it. Fallon sensed it. And apparently, Meghan's team sensed it too. Because according to multiple insiders who spoke anonymously afterward, Meghan's representatives contacted NBC within hours. They wanted footage. They wanted transcripts. They wanted clarification. And NBC? They weren't talking. Not publicly. Not yet. Which leads us to the final moment of the introduction. The moment the public never saw. During the transition to commercial, when the audience noise dipped and the cameras cut away, Lili leaned toward Jimmy Fallon again. And according to someone in the front row, she said something that made Fallon's face drain of color. Something the microphone didn't catch. Something that would make everything that followed inevitable. She whispered, "You don't know what I know." And before Fallon could respond, before anyone could process the weight of the sentence, the studio lights flashed, signaling the end of the break. Lili turned forward. She crossed her legs. She adjusted her sleeve. And she smiled for the cameras again. But nothing about the night would ever return to normal after that. Because from that moment on, the story unraveled. The questions multiplied, the whispers intensified, and the truth, or something close to it, began clawing its way into the public eye. The moment the studio doors opened and Lili Reinhart stepped onto the glossy Tonight Show stage, something felt off. It wasn't anything obvious. No visible stumble, no tear-streaked mascara, no wardrobe malfunction. Instead, it was the kind of disruption so subtle that most people wouldn't catch it until the clip went viral and someone slowed the footage to half speed. But you're not most people. You're here because you want to know what really happened. And it begins with one question. Why did Lili look like she'd seen a ghost before the show even started? Let's rewind to the seconds before she emerged from behind the curtain. The Tonight Show band had just finished their warm-up riff. The audience was buzzing, laughing, clapping. A producer whispered to Jimmy Fallon as he shuffled his blue cards, flipping through questions he clearly wasn't planning to ask. Then Lili appeared backstage, holding her phone so tightly that her knuckles were white. She wasn't scrolling. She wasn't texting. She was gripping it, like someone holding something they shouldn't have. A piece of evidence. A message. A photo. Something she wasn't ready to show but couldn't bring herself to delete. What was it? Who sent it? And why did it have her looking like a woman balancing on a fault line? No one knew yet. Not the makeup artist who stepped forward to retouch her lipstick. Not the assistant who asked whether she needed water. Not even the stage manager who gestured to her final mark and said her cue was in 15 seconds. But something was definitely wrong. Think about it. Lili Reinhart has walked onto dozens of talk show stages. She knows how to glide, how to sparkle, how to light up a room with ease. She's a professional, cheerful, polished, and confident. But this time, her pace was measured, her breathing shallow, her posture stiff enough to snap. And do you want to know the strangest part? She kept looking up at the studio balcony seats, repeatedly, like she was expecting someone to be there, someone watching her, someone she didn't want to see. The stage manager called her name softly. Lili, ready when you are. And for a moment, she didn't move. She blinked and whispered something under her breath. The makeup artist swears she heard 2 words. It's time. Time for what? Time to expose something? Time to confront something? Time to break a silence she'd been holding for months? Only Lili knew. The band kicked into the cue. Fallon turned toward the curtain. The crowd erupted. And Lili stepped forward. Her smile appeared half a second too late. The tiniest lag, barely noticeable unless you're looking for it. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like someone trying to slip into character after forgetting her lines. Now, the Tonight Show stage is usually a place of ease. Celebrities laugh as they walk in. They wave. They tease the camera. They slide into their chairs like they own the world. But Lili didn't wave, didn't laugh, didn't even acknowledge the audience. She was looking directly at Jimmy Fallon, and Jimmy Fallon alone, with a seriousness so sharp it cut through the neon backdrop behind her. People online later described the moment as a glitch in the matrix, a shift in the room, even the second before the truth cracked open. For Jimmy Fallon, though, the shift hit instantly. His smile flickered. It was quick, just a flash, but real. The kind of smile someone forces when they suddenly realize they're walking into a situation they weren't briefed on. And Jimmy was absolutely not briefed on this. He extended his hand. Lili shook it, but her grip was too firm, her fingers cold. Jimmy winced, noticeably. You can see it in several angles of the leaked audience footage if you look closely. His eyebrows lift, and he instinctively pulls back slightly. Why was she cold? Why was she trembling? What was she holding in that phone? Fallon gestured toward the chair. Lili sat, straight-backed, her hands clasped, her shoulders tight, like someone preparing for impact. She didn't cross her legs at first, unusual for her. Instead, she planted both feet on the floor with intentional grounding. Hands folded, eyes shadowed with a determination that looked like restraint more than composure. That was the first moment Fallon seemed genuinely concerned. Are you okay? He mouthed, off mic, just before the cameras went live. Lili blinked slowly, then gave the smallest nod. Not a reassuring nod, though. No, this was the kind of nod that says, I'm not okay, but I'm ready. The cameras lit up. Ladies and gentlemen, Lili Reinhart. Fallon exclaimed, his voice a few degrees too bright. The applause roared. Lili smiled, but again, too late. Too controlled. Too deliberate. It didn't reach her eyes. The smile of someone who has practiced looking fine for far too long. Then came the moment that set everything into motion. As Fallon shuffled his cards, preparing his standard small talk intro, Lili interrupted him. Not verbally, with a gesture. She reached under her jacket sleeve and discreetly tapped her phone, hidden in her palm, twice. Fallon's eyes dropped to the motion, and his expression changed. You know that look someone gets when they see something they wish they hadn't? That look of recognition mixed with dread? That was Jimmy in that moment. What was she signaling? What message had she shown him backstage? Why did Fallon suddenly swallow hard, his throat bobbing like someone bracing for a blow? He tried to continue. So Lili, welcome back. How have you? But she wasn't listening. Her gaze had shifted again, up to the balcony seats. This time, her eyes lingered. The audience later reported that she looked unsettled, almost frightened, like she was searching for a particular face in the sea of shadowed silhouettes. When she didn't find what she was looking for, she exhaled slowly and turned back to Jimmy. The calculated calm returned. But the damage had been done. The vibe had shifted. Everyone on stage felt it. Awkward laughter rippled through the room. Jimmy adjusted his cards again, shuffling them even though they were already in order. It was a nervous habit he couldn't hide. You okay? He finally asked, this time aloud. And Lili answered with another question. Can we talk about something real tonight? Not a movie, not a series, not a charity event. Something real. Fallon blinked, blindsided. Sure, he said, voice rising like a man caught between curiosity and concern. Lili inhaled. Her chest lifted slowly. Her shoulders tightened. Her fingers drummed once against the armrest. And then she said it, the line that made the entire audience stop breathing for half a second. Do you ever feel like people in Hollywood hide the wrong things? A strange question. A dangerous one. A question with too many answers. Fallon froze. The audience murmured. But Lili wasn't finished. She added, especially when children are involved. A pin could have dropped. You could hear the hum of the lights, the soft buzz of the studio monitors, the nervous shuffle of someone in the third row crossing their legs silently. Fallon tried to laugh it off. Haha. Well, Hollywood is definitely full of secrets, but she cut in sharply, without hesitation. I'm talking about Meghan Markle. The temperature of the room changed. You could practically feel the floorboards tighten. Jimmy paused, stunned. Someone backstage shouted, cut. But the signal didn't go through. The band shifted uncomfortably. The audience gasped, genuinely, not performatively. And Lili? She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, elbows on her knees, and locked eyes with Fallon with laser focus. Her voice dropped to a near whisper, the kind of whisper that gets louder simply because everyone else in the room goes silent. She hasn't been honest about her kids. Fallon stiffened. Someone in the front row covered their mouth. And the camera captured every inch of Lili's expression as she delivered each word with surgical precision. Not emotional, not dramatic, not exaggerated, just certain. Fallon cleared his throat, preparing to intervene, redirect, salvage, anything. But Lili wasn't done. She wasn't backing away. She wasn't softening her wording. She wasn't apologizing. If anything, she was just getting started. Fallon leaned closer, whispering urgently off mic. We can't talk about. But she whispered back. You know why we have to. The whole audience was in suspense. The crew froze. Security shifted positions. Even the band stopped tapping their instruments. And then, Lili's eyes moved back toward the balcony, slowly, deliberately. Before she returned her gaze to Fallon. This time, she looked lighter. Like seeing the empty seat she'd been searching for had finally relieved her of something heavy. Fallon exhaled shakily. Lili folded her hands. The air tightened, and before Fallon could recover, she said the final line of the chapter. The line that would become the center of a media hurricane within hours. I wasn't supposed to say anything tonight, but she gave me a reason. Fallon's jaw dropped. The audience froze. The producer behind the glass booth swore under his breath. And Lili, with that same eerie calm, stared straight into the camera, as if speaking directly to the world, and added, and once you know the reason, everything changes. The strange thing about live television is this. The truth always slips out in the smallest moments. Not the polished ones. Not the scripted ones. Not the segments rehearsed backstage with producers hovering over cue cards like nervous parents at a school recital. No, the truth reveals itself in the hesitation. So let's start there. Jimmy Fallon hesitated. Not a subtle pause. Not a comedic beat. Not the kind of delay-seasoned talk show hosts use to build anticipation before a punchline. This hesitation was different. It was heavy. It was loaded. It was the kind of moment that made even casual viewers lean a little closer to their screens without knowing why. Lili Reinhart had just mentioned Meghan Markle. She said it plainly, without fear, without hesitation, as if her entire night was building toward this moment. And Fallon, who normally thrives on chaotic interviews, suddenly looked like a man walking barefoot across broken glass. You could see it in the way he gripped his blue question cards, in the way he avoided eye contact with Lili, in the way his mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He didn't want to go there. Not that night. Not with that topic. Not with that guest. But Lili wasn't giving him a choice. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms as if settling in for the exact conversation Fallon was trying to avoid. Her expression said, "Ask me. Go on. I know you want to." And Fallon? He was sweating. Not visibly, not dramatically. He's too polished for that. But enough for the cameras to pick up the faintest sheen along his forehead. Enough for the audience, who had already sensed the tension in the air, to whisper among themselves. What was happening? What did Lili know? Why was Fallon so uncomfortable? But here's the real question. Why did Fallon bring up Meghan Markle in the first place? He didn't have to. He could have stuck to the script, the movie, the promo, the jokes, the safe topics. Instead, he said her name, like someone playing with fire without realizing the gasoline at his feet. So let's dig into the moment before he said it. Rewatch the clip carefully. The few seconds after Lili asked if they could talk about something real, Fallon glances toward the producer's booth. It's quick, but unmistakable. A flick of the eyes that says deeper than words, "Help me." And the producers? They froze. Because they knew something Fallon didn't. Lili wasn't bluffing. She had something. Something big. Something she wasn't supposed to say on national television. Something that would drag Meghan Markle into a spotlight she spent years trying to control. And Fallon, perhaps foolishly, perhaps instinctively, leaned into the moment instead of away from it. He swallowed hard, shuffled his cards again, and asked the question he definitely did not want to ask. "So, you mentioned Meghan. What do you mean by that?" The audience inhaled sharply. The band leader looked up. A producer whispered, "Oh no," into his headset. Because that question, that single line, it opened the door wide. Lili's reaction was instantaneous. She didn't blink. She didn't look surprised. She didn't hesitate. Instead, she stared at Fallon as if she'd been waiting for that question for months, maybe longer. "Exactly what you think I mean," she said. Fallon stammered. I don't think I know what you mean." "Oh, you do," Lili replied, her voice steady as stone. "Everybody does. They just pretend not to." Her tone wasn't accusatory. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. Instead, she delivered the line like someone discussing the weather. Casually, almost gently. And that's what made it hit harder. Fallon tried to laugh. It came out thin. "Ha ha. Well, I'm sure Meghan." But Lili cut him off with a single, perfectly timed question. "Jimmy, have you ever seen her children?" The studio froze. No one breathed. A woman in the second row covered her mouth. A man in the fourth row whispered, "What is she doing?" Fallon blinked rapidly, stunned by the boldness of the question. Not because it was rude, but because it was pointed. Because it was layered. Because it implied something that had never been spoken out loud on a platform this large. "I mean, sure," Fallon said weakly. "We've all seen the pictures." "Pictures," Lili repeated, as if tasting the word. "That's right. Pictures." She let the silence linger. Pictures can be edited, staged, manufactured, especially in Hollywood. Fallon's jaw tensed. The audience leaned in. The producers shook their heads nervously. "Lili," Fallon began, but she wasn't done. She leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, and asked another question. This one quieter, more dangerous. "And what if those pictures aren't what they seem?" Fallon pressed his lips together, clearly trying to figure out how to defuse the moment without making it worse. But here's the problem. You can't put toothpaste back into the tube. You can't unring a bell. And you can't unask a question like that on live television. Especially not when the guest asking it looks like someone finally ready to detonate the truth. "What are you trying to say exactly?" Fallon asked, trying to maintain control. Lili didn't blink. "What I'm trying to say," she replied slowly, is that the stories we've been told about her children don't add up. And people pretend not to notice because it's easier. Her voice dropped lower. But once you see it, once you really look at it, you can't unsee it. Fallon's jaw tightened. And that's when he made the mistake. The one thing he should never have asked. He leaned forward, eyes narrowed, and said, "Are you saying?" Meghan lied. Lili didn't hesitate. "Yes." Gasps erupted across the studio. Fallon inhaled deeply, visibly thrown off. His pen slipped from between his fingers and clattered quietly onto the desk. He scrambled to pick it up, trying to maintain composure, but even the movement felt shaky. The Tonight Show audience wasn't used to moments like this. No jokes, no laughter, no silly skits or lip-sync battles. This was raw, unfiltered, explosive. Fallon's voice wavered. "Lili, that's a very serious accusation. And I'm prepared to back it up," she cut in. Fallon blinked in alarm. "What do you mean by back it up?" Lili tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Let's just say, I'm not speaking out of turn. There are things I've known for a while, things I wasn't planning to share. But after what happened recently, I don't see a reason to protect her anymore." The audience murmured. Someone whispered, "What happened?" Fallon squeezed the armrests of his chair. "What happened?" he echoed, forcing a smile that didn't match his eyes. Lili exhaled slowly, gaze steady. "You'll understand soon," she said. "But it started with something I saw. Something I wish I hadn't." Fallon swallowed hard. "Something you saw where?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Fallon, deeply, like she was deciding whether to drop the truth now or let it simmer a little longer. And then she smiled. A slow, deliberate, chilling smile. "That's not the question you should be asking, Jimmy." Fallon frowned. "Then what is?" he asked, confused but hooked, like everyone else in the room. Lili leaned back in her chair, folding her arms with quiet confidence, and said, "The question you should be asking is, why am I speaking about this now?" The studio erupted with murmurs. Fallon looked rattled. The audience looked electrified. And Lili looked like someone finally ready to break a silence she'd been carrying like an anchor around her neck. Fallon tried to recover. "Well, why now then?" Lili's eyes glittered with something sharp. "Because Meghan made a mistake," she said. "And her mistake involved the children." Fallon's breath hitched. "Lili, I'm not finished." Her voice sliced through his words. And suddenly, Lili Reinhart, who had walked onto the stage trembling, unsure, visibly shaken, now looked like the most certain person in the room. Like a woman who had decided the truth mattered more than whatever consequences might follow. Fallon's face went pale. "What mistake?" he asked, whispering now. Lili leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a razor-thin whisper. "The kind of mistake that reveals everything. The kind of mistake that finally made me understand the truth about Archie and Lilibet." Fallon's eyes widened. "What truth?" Lili sat back up, exhaled, and stared directly into the camera, as if speaking to the millions who would eventually see the clip. "The truth," she said softly, "that Meghan never expected anyone to find." A collective shiver passed through the audience. Fallon froze. Even the band, the Tonight Show band, who joked through anything, sat perfectly still. And then Lili said something that sent every producer into panic mode. "I'm only going to say this once," she whispered. "But after tonight, I won't be the only one talking." Fallon gaped. The audience gasped. And then, before anyone could fully process what she meant, Lili added quietly, "Someone else knows. And they've already reached out to me." Fallon blinked. "Who?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Lili looked into the camera with chilling calm. "You'll meet them soon." If you thought the tension on the Tonight Show set had peaked in Chapter 2, you'd be wrong. That was just the tremor before the earthquake. Because Lili Reinhart wasn't done, not even close. She was about to drop what insiders later called an off-script bombshell, one that no one backstage had anticipated, one that sent Jimmy Fallon into a near panic, and one that changed the trajectory of that night and the conversation around Meghan Markle's children, forever. It began with a question, subtle but piercing. "Jimmy." Lili leaned forward, her elbows resting lightly on her knees, her gaze unwavering. "Have you ever been told a story so often that you assumed it was true, only to realize, too late, that everything you believed was carefully constructed for the world to see?" The audience froze. They weren't sure whether to clap, gasp, or hold their breath. And Fallon? He swallowed hard, feeling the full weight of the words before even formulating a response. Lili continued, her voice calm, controlled, almost conversational, but every syllable loaded with tension. That's how most of us see Meghan's children, Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. We see the images, we see the appearances, we see the interviews, and we think we understand. But what if that's only the surface? What if indeed? Do you remember the first time you saw a story unravel before your eyes? The first time you realized someone had been performing for you while you watched? That's exactly the sensation in the room. People didn't just hear Lili. They felt her words. They sank into the back of the chairs, leaned forward instinctively, clutched their arms, tried to make sense of what was being said without fully comprehending it. Fallon, to his credit, tried to maintain composure. His voice, typically buoyant and warm, wavered. Lili, that's a very serious statement. Are you suggesting? Yes, she interrupted, voice steady. I am suggesting that there are things the public doesn't see. Things that have been carefully staged. Images presented as truth. Narratives carefully crafted to hide. Well, you know. The camera zoomed in on Fallon. You could see his throat work as he swallowed. The cards on his desk seemed suddenly heavier than they had been an hour ago. He forced a laugh, thin, unconvincing. He tried to regain footing. Well, I mean, we all see pictures, right? Those are public images. Lili's gaze shifted slightly, enough for the cameras to catch it, and she tilted her head with an expression that mixed curiosity, challenge, and something darker. Exactly. Pictures, she repeated, letting the word hang in the air. Pictures can be manipulated. They can be edited. Photos can be staged, especially in Hollywood. And especially when children are involved. At this, the audience murmured in disbelief. Some whispered to neighbors. Some looked around as if someone else might have the answer. And Fallon, sensing the shift, tried a casual laugh. Well, you know, people do make things look a certain way sometimes. But Lili wasn't joking, and the laughter didn't mask what was coming next. You know what else? She said, leaning closer now, her hands folded in front of her, elbows barely resting on her knees. I've heard things from people who worked closely with her. Stylists, assistants, security personnel. People who've seen what goes on behind closed doors. And they've noticed the inconsistencies. Small ones at first. Tiny details. But they add up. Fallon's eyes widened. He shifted in his seat, clearly unsettled. And you could almost see the gears turning behind his eyes. Do I steer this back to safe territory? Do I intervene? Do I let this unfold? The answer? He let it unfold. Because he had no idea what she was about to say next. Jimmy, she continued, I've had conversations with people who've worked directly with her in her home. And what they told me, it doesn't match the narrative everyone sees in the media. Fallon leaned back slightly. He forced a smile, still unsure if he was hosting a talk show or witnessing a private deposition. I see. Well, what are these inconsistencies you're referring to? And this, right here, was the moment that made the evening go from tense to explosive. Lili's eyes didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. And her next words were deliberate, measured, and haunting. The children, Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. I'm not convinced they live with her. The studio erupted with a collective intake of breath. The audience gasped. The band fell silent. Fallon's pen clattered against the desk, his hands shaking ever so slightly as he tried to pick it up without showing it on camera. And the producers? They whispered urgently, trying to assess damage control, but they had no signal for this. Think about it. A live show, millions of viewers, and one statement, I'm not convinced they live with her, landing like a bomb. The implications alone were staggering. Were these children being hidden? Were appearances fabricated? Were stories told by Meghan carefully choreographed to maintain a narrative the public would never question? And then, to amplify the tension, Lili added another layer. I've seen evidence, she said, almost quietly, yet with perfect clarity. Evidence that contradicts what's been presented publicly. I'm not talking rumors or gossip. I'm talking about things only someone close to the situation would know. The audience shifted in their seats. A collective unease settled over the studio. Fallon's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I don't. What kind of evidence? He stammered. Lili leaned back slightly and smiled. The smile of someone who knows the impact of her words. I can't share everything yet. But I can say this. the images you see, the appearances you've been shown. They're carefully curated. And some people who've lived through it, seen it firsthand, have questions. Do you feel that, watching this moment in your mind? The tension, the suspense, the realization that something is being revealed that could shake everything you believed? That's what the studio felt, live, in real time. And Lili Reinhart, who had entered the room trembling and unsure, had now taken complete control. Every eye was on her. Every mind hung on her words. Fallon tried to laugh again. Well, I'm sure she... No, Lili interrupted. Her voice was sharp, clear, controlled. This isn't about laughing. This is about truth. And when it comes to her children, I believe there's more to the story than anyone realizes. More than even the most avid media followers can see. The phrase "more to the story" set off a ripple of murmurs in the audience. People instinctively leaned forward. They knew a revelation was coming. And for Fallon, it was clear. He was hosting the moment everyone would dissect for weeks, perhaps months. But then, she leaned in even closer. Her tone dropped to a whisper, just enough for the microphones to catch it. And I'm not the only one who thinks this. There are others, insiders, witnesses, former employees, who have seen the discrepancies, who have been silenced, who have waited for the right moment. Fallon's eyes widened. You're saying others have seen? Yes, she replied, her voice unwavering. And what I've seen aligns with what they've described. Patterns, timelines, anomalies, things that don't add up. And once you notice them, you can't ignore them. The camera panned slowly over Fallon's face. He was pale. He cleared his throat, trying to regain composure, but even his practiced charm couldn't mask the shock. The audience sat in tense silence. The band, usually a source of laughter and relief, played only a single chord, as if afraid to break the spell. And then, as if to seal the moment, to drive the point home, Lili dropped the line that would become the viral clip everyone remembered. Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana are not, as you've been told, living her reality. They are symbols, appearances, and people have been using them to control perception. The room was silent. Fallon swallowed audibly. He reached for his cards, shaking slightly, then let them fall to the desk. The audience members' eyes darted to one another, whispering questions they couldn't speak aloud. And the producers? They frantically tried to signal a cut, but the moment was already immortalized. Live, unfiltered, irreversible. Do you see it? The gravity? The implication? Because after Lili Reinhart delivered that bombshell, the entire narrative everyone believed, every carefully curated image, every public appearance, every news story about Meghan Markle's children, suddenly came under suspicion. Fallon cleared his throat, voice cracking slightly. Lili, that's a huge claim. Are you prepared to stand by that? Lili leaned back, eyes locked on the camera, and smiled once more. I've seen enough to know. And what I've seen you'll want to know too. There is a moment in every explosive revelation when the audience realizes the stakes aren't just high, they're catastrophic. The kind of moment that makes you lean forward in your seat, heart racing, palms sweaty, thinking, how can anyone come back from this? For Lili Reinhart, that moment came in the form of evidence. Evidence she claimed to have seen, something so tangible, so undeniable, that it threatened to undo the narrative the world had accepted without question. It started as she leaned toward Fallon again, her elbows on the armrests, her voice calm, deliberate, and deadly serious. Jimmy, she said, I'm not speaking hypothetically. I'm not speculating. I've seen things that would shock people if they knew. The room went silent. Not the polite silence you hear when someone asks a rhetorical question. No, this was the weight of the world silence. The kind that presses down on your chest and makes you question whether you want to hear what comes next. What kind of things? Fallon asked, his usual warmth replaced by palpable tension. His voice was low, measured, but trembling under the weight of anticipation. Lili exhaled, just a soft whisper, but it carried across the studio like a promise of devastation. Evidence. Images, conversations, inconsistencies in timelines. Things only someone close enough could see. Things that don't match the story people are told about Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. The words hung in the air. You could almost hear the audience's collective gasp. Images, conversations, timelines, inconsistencies. Do you see it? The slow accumulation of pressure? Lili wasn't throwing around vague accusations. She was methodically laying the groundwork for a revelation that would reverberate far beyond the Tonight Show studio. Fallon leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the desk. You've seen something concrete, he asked. Something tangible? Yes, Lili replied, her eyes flashing with certainty. Concrete enough that it made me question what I thought I knew about her children. Concrete enough that I couldn't ignore it. And then, in a move that froze everyone in their seats, she described the first piece of evidence. I was shown a series of photographs, she said, voice low, careful, precise. Photos supposedly of Archie and Lilibet at various family events. But when you look closely, the details don't line up. The lighting, the shadows, the angles. Things are inconsistent. Subtle, almost imperceptible if you aren't paying attention. But to someone who knows what to look for, the inconsistencies are glaring. Fallon's eyes widened. He adjusted his microphone, shifting in his chair, unsure whether to encourage her or redirect the conversation. The audience leaned forward instinctively, sensing the tension. Lili continued. There were documents, too. Calendars, schedules, statements. Items meant to prove a timeline that didn't match the evidence I was given. You could literally follow the events day by day and see that something doesn't add up. A low murmur passed through the crowd. They were processing what she had just said. Timelines that didn't align, photographs that might have been manipulated. The implication was staggering. In conversations, Lili added, almost in passing, as if this were the most casual part of the story. I've heard from people who have worked closely with her. People who've interacted with her children. They've noticed anomalies. Things that don't fit the narrative. Fallon cleared his throat. Lili, you're saying that people close to her have doubts? Yes, she said, unwavering. Doubts that they've been too afraid to voice publicly. Until now. Pause. A beat. The room went quiet again. You could almost hear the collective intake of breath from viewers at home, imagining the storm building backstage, imagining the panic in Meghan's team at that very moment. And that's not all, Lili added. There were audio clips. Conversations I wasn't meant to hear. Discussions about appearances, about public perception, about timing. Things that suggest the children were used to maintain a narrative. Not just in media, but in real life. Fallon's face drained of color. He tried to mask it with a cough. You're suggesting, he started, then faltered. The words caught in his throat because he didn't want to articulate the full gravity of what Lili was implying. Yes, Lili said softly, almost conspiratorially. I'm suggesting that the public story doesn't match reality. And some of the people involved have been following a script that keeps people believing in a family that, in reality, is much more complicated. She paused, letting the tension build. The audience could feel it. The crew could feel it. And Fallon, despite his years of experience, looked like a man on the edge of panic. And then came the line that would ignite a firestorm. Jimmy, Lili said, voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried across the studio. The evidence I've seen, it changes everything we think we know about Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. The audience gasped audibly. Some leaned forward, straining to catch every word. Others whispered to neighbors, trying to process the weight of the revelation. And Fallon? He froze, his hands gripping the desk as if he could hold the room together by sheer force of will. You're saying? Fallon started, but Lili interrupted. Yes, she said. I'm saying that once you look at the evidence, you can't ignore the inconsistencies. You can't ignore the questions it raises. And you can't pretend it doesn't exist. Do you feel that tension? That almost tangible pressure building in the air? That's what the studio felt. And it wasn't just the audience. It was Fallon, the crew, the band, even the security personnel. Everyone understood, instinctively, that this wasn't just entertainment. This was exposure, revelation, a crack in the carefully constructed narrative everyone thought they knew. Lili leaned back in her chair, folding her hands. Her gaze shifted slightly toward Fallon, and then to the cameras. She knew every eye in the studio was on her. She knew that millions more would watch this clip later, dissecting every gesture, every pause, every word. And she smiled. A small, deliberate smile that radiated confidence, certainty, and a chilling calm. And that's why I'm here, she said. To speak out. To make people think. To show that the story we've been told may not be the story that really exists. Fallon's jaw tightened. He swallowed. He tried to compose himself, tried to recover the usual Tonight Show rhythm. But it was gone. He knew it, the producers knew it, and the audience knew it. This was no longer a talk show segment. This was a moment of exposure, and nothing would undo it. And Jimmy, Lili added, voice soft but pointed, there's more to see. And when people start paying attention, the evidence will speak for itself. The cameras lingered on Fallon's stunned expression. The audience felt the shift, the gravity, the inevitability. Lili Reinhart had entered as a guest, but she left as a catalyst, the kind of person who could ignite questions the world hadn't dared to ask. She wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Because what came next, behind the studio doors, off camera, and in the moments Fallon would never forget, would escalate everything to a level no one in the room was prepared for. And the most shocking part? The evidence she hinted at isn't just in photographs, documents, or recordings. It's in the people who witnessed it, the people who lived through it, the people who have been silenced. And soon, according to Lili, they would have their voices heard. Before Lili Reinhart ever stepped onto the Tonight Show stage, there had been another moment. A private moment. A tense moment. One that few would ever know about until now. A confrontation that, according to insiders, had left Lili shaken, bewildered, and yet strangely resolute. Because what happened months ago explained everything about why she was standing there tonight, prepared to drop revelations no one was expecting. It happened at an industry party, one of those glitzy Hollywood events with chandeliers, champagne towers, and the low hum of laughter mixed with strategic networking. Lili had been invited, as she often was, as part of her professional circles. She was not expecting Meghan Markle. Not in this capacity. Not in a way that would alter her perception of the world and force her to consider what she had witnessed about the children everyone assumed were Meghan's. But Meghan was there, and according to Lili's account, she didn't appear by accident. Lili remembered the moment distinctly. Meghan had walked over with a calm, poised smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was practiced, rehearsed, the kind of smile meant to put the other person slightly off balance. Meghan's gaze held a certain intensity, as if she already knew Lili had been noticing things, and perhaps even thinking too much. You've been asking questions, Meghan said, voice soft, measured, almost casual. But there was an undercurrent, a warning, a challenge, and a demand for silence all at once. Lili stiffened. She hadn't expected to be confronted. Questions? About what? She asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. Meghan didn't answer directly. She tilted her head slightly, her expression carefully composed. About the children, she said simply. And that was enough. The room around them seemed to shrink. The clinking of glasses faded into the background. Lili could feel the intensity, the subtle power shift. She was standing face to face with someone whose influence extended far beyond Hollywood. Someone who had built an empire not just in film and television, but in public perception. Lili, Meghan continued, leaning in slightly. You have to understand. People think they know things they don't. They interpret the surface. But the surface is carefully controlled. The words were almost hypnotic. Calm, deliberate, persuasive, yet threatening in their implication. Lili could sense the unspoken message. Do not cross me. Do not ask further. Do not reveal what you've seen. Lili didn't back down. She had prepared herself for this. Months earlier, she had begun piecing together what she suspected. Inconsistencies in appearances, odd scheduling of public events, subtle anomalies in public statements. She had spoken quietly with crew members, assistants, and insiders who had been close enough to notice that something about Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana wasn't as it seemed. Meghan, Lili said slowly, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm not making assumptions. I'm just asking questions. And the questions I'm asking are about what I've observed, and what others have told me. Meghan's smile didn't falter. Her tone remained calm, but there was a sharpness beneath it now, a quiet force that could cut through the bravest of hearts. Questions, she repeated. Be careful, Lili. Questions have consequences. People see what they want to see. And sometimes, curiosity isn't rewarded. That was the warning, the thinly veiled threat, the unmistakable message that Lili had crossed an invisible boundary. But then, something unexpected happened. Meghan paused. She leaned back, giving Lili space, and the room seemed to shift again. It was as if Meghan were testing Lili, assessing her, watching whether she would shrink, whether she would retreat, whether she would submit to the invisible rules that governed public behavior around her. Lili didn't retreat. "I'm not here to harm anyone," she said, her eyes locked with Meghan's. "I just want to know the truth. About the children. About what people aren't seeing. About what's real." For a moment, Meghan's expression softened. Just slightly. But the softness didn't last. It transformed into a quiet, controlled intensity, the kind that leaves a person feeling exposed, evaluated, and yet powerless to look away. "You want to know the truth?" Meghan asked, her voice dropping to a near whisper, audible only to Lili. "The truth isn't for everyone. And some truths are dangerous. They can destroy lives, Lili. And once you speak them aloud, there's no taking them back." Lili nodded, absorbing the weight of the words. She realized something in that instant. Meghan had constructed a narrative so carefully that any deviation from it could unravel the image everyone had accepted. And yet, there were cracks. Subtle, invisible to the casual observer, but visible to someone who knew where to look. "Dangerous for who?" Lili asked, her voice quiet but firm. Meghan's gaze flicked around the room briefly before returning to Lili. "Dangerous for everyone," she said. "For the children, for the family, for the story people believe, and for the person who knows too much." Lili understood then why this confrontation had happened. It wasn't a casual greeting or a friendly exchange. Meghan had intentionally cornered her. She wanted to gauge Lili's intentions, to test her resolve, to determine whether she could be trusted to remain silent. But Lili didn't intend to remain silent. "I'm not here to lie," Lili said. "I'm not here to fabricate stories. I only want the truth. And if the truth is uncomfortable, it doesn't make it any less real." Meghan's expression tightened, a subtle but unmistakable tension appearing in the jawline. "You're bold," she said softly. "Some might call it reckless. But boldness isn't always rewarded. Be careful, Lili. Questions have power, and power attracts consequences." Do you feel that tension? The way power and truth collided in that room? The way a single conversation, a private confrontation, could set the stage for the explosive public revelation months later? Because this was exactly what happened. That night, Lili left the party with a heavy sense of responsibility. She had seen the warning in Meghan's eyes, felt the weight of unspoken threats, and yet also recognized the cracks. She understood that there were anomalies, inconsistencies, and subtle manipulations that the public would never see unless someone like her was willing to speak out. And she decided, in that moment, that she would. Months later, when she stepped onto the Tonight Show stage, the audience had no idea what had transpired behind the scenes. They didn't know about the private confrontation, the warnings, the threats, or the calculated assessments Meghan had made. They only saw a composed, poised, yet intense Lili Reinhart, a woman who had carried the weight of knowledge long enough to know how to deliver it with precision. The tension she exuded, the words she chose, the pauses she left in place, all were the result of preparation born from that confrontation. Every measured look, every carefully selected phrase, every intentional silence was shaped by the knowledge that what she was about to reveal could be explosive. And when she mentioned inconsistencies in timelines, odd scheduling of appearances, and subtle manipulations surrounding Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, it wasn't just speculation. It was the cumulative effect of months of observation, corroboration, and careful thought, all triggered by that single private encounter months ago. The confrontation had cemented one thing in Lili's mind. If she ever chose to speak, she needed to be precise, calculated, and relentless. Because the truth about the children, and what Meghan was allegedly hiding, was not only complicated but potentially dangerous to reveal. And yet, she had taken the risk. She had walked onto that stage, leaned forward, and begun to speak in a way that left Fallon, the producers, and the audience reeling. That confrontation months earlier explained everything. It explained her confidence. It explained her certainty. And it explained why, for the first time, someone in Hollywood was willing to challenge the narrative around Meghan Markle's children in a public, undeniable way. But the confrontation also foreshadowed something far more significant, something the public hadn't yet seen. Because according to Lili, what she observed then, combined with what she revealed on stage, pointed to a deeper truth. A truth that would shock the world and force everyone to question everything they thought they knew. And that truth? It wasn't fully revealed on The Tonight Show. Not yet. There were pieces, fragments of evidence, hints of irregularities, and Lili promised more would come. The ripple effect of Lili Reinhart's revelation didn't stop at The Tonight Show stage. Once the first whispers reached Hollywood insiders, the stylists, the production assistants, the security personnel, the set designers who had glimpsed moments behind closed doors, a quiet but unmistakable murmur began to spread. For months, these individuals had noticed things. Inconsistencies, odd scheduling, gaps in appearances that didn't make sense. And now, with Lili publicly alluding to what they had quietly observed, those whispers threatened to become a chorus. It started with subtle conversations, hallway whispers in production offices, brief exchanges in green rooms, and text messages that suddenly felt dangerous to write. One stylist, who requested anonymity, recounted a moment on a set years prior where she noticed that Archie Harrison had been photographed at an event, but the timeline of his appearance didn't match the location Meghan had presented publicly. "I thought I was imagining it at first," she said later in an interview. "But then I noticed the same patterns repeating, and it didn't feel right." Patterns. That word would become central. Patterns that only insiders, people who witnessed the behind-the-scenes choreography, could identify. Patterns that made them uneasy. Patterns that, when viewed together, suggested something more than coincidence. And then came the first phone calls. Lili received messages from people she had met casually at previous events. Friends of friends. Crew members. One by one, they began to approach her quietly. "We've never seen the kids," one said. Another whispered, "We know something is off, but we've been told to keep quiet." What would you do if you were in their shoes? Imagine witnessing subtle inconsistencies in a narrative you're expected to uphold. Imagine the fear of speaking out, knowing that even a single slip could result in professional exile or public scrutiny. That's the world these insiders lived in, and they trusted Lili enough to break that silence. Some insiders referenced specific events. One production assistant mentioned a holiday gathering where Lilibet Diana was allegedly present in the family photos, yet according to several crew members, she was never on set at that time. Another stylist described a photo shoot in which Archie Harrison's supposed interactions seemed staged, meticulously timed for public perception rather than organic familial interaction. And each time Lili reviewed these accounts, a troubling picture began to form. One in which the children appeared as symbols or props in a broader narrative rather than living, breathing family members in the way the public assumed. What did this mean for Hollywood's understanding of reality versus image? For years, the industry had understood that celebrities carefully curated every appearance, every public interaction. But this was different. This wasn't just image management or branding. This suggested deliberate orchestration of a family's life, down to its youngest members, in a way that seemed almost surreal. Lili took careful notes. Every conversation she had, every detail she learned from insiders, built a cumulative case that she could no longer ignore. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't rumor. It was a collection of first-hand observations from people who had been close enough to witness the orchestration of appearances, to recognize subtle inconsistencies, and to know what was being concealed. One Hollywood producer, speaking under condition of anonymity, emphasized the magnitude of these revelations. "I've worked on countless productions," the producer said. "I've seen families present themselves for public consumption. But this is different. You start piecing together timelines, appearances, the gaps in interaction, and it doesn't add up. Not by a long shot. And it wasn't just professionals behind the cameras noticing. Even celebrity peers noticed subtle irregularities. Friends and acquaintances would remark on the strange scheduling of appearances, the inconsistencies in who was present at events, and the peculiar way the children were introduced in public spaces. One actor friend reportedly said, "I've been in the room when Meghan talked about Archie and Lilibet. Some things don't match. Some stories don't make sense." Imagine being Lili, receiving these corroborations from multiple sources. Each account, each whisper, each insider testimony validated the patterns she had already observed. Every story reinforced the growing suspicion that Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, while publicly presented as Meghan's children, might not exist in the reality the public was led to believe. And so, a network began to form. Not a formal investigation, not an official inquiry, yet. Just a web of insiders willing to speak to someone they trusted, sharing pieces of a puzzle that, once assembled, would challenge the narrative millions accepted without question. Some of these insiders had witnessed events firsthand. Some had overheard conversations. Others had seen photos and video clips that, when examined carefully, revealed inconsistencies in timing, setting, or interaction. Each detail on its own might have seemed inconsequential. But taken together, they painted a compelling, unsettling picture, one that Lili knew the world needed to hear. Do you ever wonder how much of the world's perception of celebrities is crafted behind the scenes? How much is real and how much is carefully manipulated for public consumption? That's exactly what Lili was grappling with. And the more she learned, the more urgent it became to speak, to reveal, to challenge the carefully orchestrated narrative. As Lili pieced together the testimonies, she also realized the risk. Each insider had reasons for silence: fear of public scrutiny, fear of retribution, fear of the unknown consequences of revealing these truths. And yet, their willingness to confide in her, even quietly, reinforced her determination to act. This was bigger than a single interview. This was about exposing patterns and behaviors that had been meticulously hidden from public scrutiny. And here's the key. These insiders weren't talking to tabloids or social media trolls. They weren't leaking for attention. They spoke because Lili represented credibility, discretion, and the courage to amplify truths that others had been too afraid to voice. The trust placed in her was monumental. And it wasn't just about celebrity gossip anymore. It was about perceived reality, media manipulation, and the construction of a family image. Carefully curated for public consumption, but potentially far removed from lived reality. By now, Lili understood the gravity. Every name, every detail, every account contributed to a mounting body of circumstantial evidence. And while she could not release all of it publicly on The Tonight Show, there were limits, legal concerns, and ethical considerations. She could set the stage. She could ignite curiosity, plant the seeds of doubt, and create a framework that would invite further scrutiny. And that's exactly what she did. By the end of the segment, the audience had witnessed a calm, poised, and confident Lili Reinhart presenting not just a claim, but a web of observations validated by insiders. A tapestry of patterns, inconsistencies, and testimonies that suggested something larger was at play. Something that challenged the public perception of Meghan Markle's family. Fallon tried to recover, tried to redirect, tried to steer the conversation towards safer territory. But the audience could feel it. The energy had shifted. The story had teeth. The narrative had changed. And just when you thought the tension could not escalate further, Lili added the most chilling detail. I've been told by people who were close enough to see the truth that what most of the public believes about Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana may be nothing more than appearances. Carefully constructed, orchestrated appearances designed to keep the world from asking too many questions. The room went silent. Even Fallon's usually steady composure faltered. The weight of her words, the cumulative impact of months of insider testimonies, and the implications of manipulated appearances hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. And in that silence, the audience understood something unmistakable. This was